All right, that's the first time this thing has run in 20 years, so it runs pretty good. It's making almost 80 pounds of oil pressure. All right, guys, you remember our 1970s Corvette that we picked up out of a garage that had been sitting for 20 years? The guy actually painted the entire car, and then he took all the interior out, and he ended up wanting to get the thing painted. So he painted the entire car and bought all brand new interior for it. Then he parked it in his garage, and life happens, and he wasn't able to assemble the rest of the car. So it sat on jack stands in his garage for 20 years, and he hasn't touched it since. It had literally been under 5 car covers. I'll link the video up here so you can see when we picked this thing up. But a long time has passed. I had set it up back because we had a bunch of projects to get to. Now that we had gone to Hot Rod Power Tour, we can relax a little bit because we have a little bit of time, but not too much because we have our patina party that we're going to get ready for. So we're going to get this car done for patina party so you guys can see it there. But it's a really, really nice car, and so I wanted to do the interior right. Now, when we went to pick this thing up, my girlfriend Julia actually fell in love with this thing and the whole story behind it, and she ended up purchasing it. So she had sold her 1969 C10 and she wanted to tackle this. So we're going to get this thing ready for her to drive around in the summer, and it's a very nice car, so you'll definitely see this thing in the future on the channel. But we got to get this thing pretty nice to get ready for our patina party show on August 13th. So you'll see Julia in future videos wrenching on this thing just as much as I am, and we're trying to get this thing ready for that. But since the last time you've seen it, it hasn't been washed. It's literally just been sitting outside. But I actually took it over to a guy right across the street from us, Joe's Superior Interiors, and he ended up assembling the interior for us. He couldn't do the door panels because we're missing some of the rods and stuff in the door panels and the power lock system. So we didn't get that done. But pretty much everything else on the interior, the entire headliner, the dash, the seats, the carpet, everything like that, he ended up getting put together for us just because we were so crunched whenever we were doing the wheelies. And he ended up putting the back glass in for us as well. So that's really nice. We got all the trim on it and the back glass is installed. But that leaves us to do all the outside trim, all the lights and everything like that had been taken out whenever it was painted. Now, this car has been sitting for 20 years in a garage. So it's going to get the typical, we need to go through the oil, go through the transmission fluid, all that stuff because it had been sitting for so long. I'm sure the fuel system on this thing is really gross. But apparently he said he drained the gas tank before he parked it, but who knows? So we got to go through all of that stuff. But this thing is a pretty nice car. I put it up on the lift earlier, and I'll put it on the lift because I know we do have to do brake lines on this thing. So I'll show you guys. It's not too bad a shape, and actually can be a really, really nice car when we're done. But right now, I just put the windows up. These are power windows, so it's kind of a pain to be able to put the windows up and down without any power to the rest of the car because our window switches don't work. So got to solve that issue. But when I put the power windows up, we can at least store it outside. And I want to be able to wash this thing because the paint, like I said, has just been repainted, but it had been sitting for so long. It's very, very dirty. So I want to just pressure wash it because I don't want to scratch it while we're leaning on this thing and working on it. So I want to pressure wash it real quick, get this thing shining. So that way, whenever we work on it, we're not digging our hands into the dirt and scratching the paint underneath of it. So let's push this thing outside, knock that out real quick, and then we'll tackle the next project on this. Alright guys, we're back on the Corvette and we got it inside. I put it back on the lift and we're starting to bleed the brakes on it because I think we can get this thing fired up hopefully in this episode. Alright, so this is Julia and this is her Corvette. Whenever she was with me when we picked it up, she had actually sold her 1969 C10 and found out that she wanted this thing whenever we picked it up. So this is gonna be her car and she's gonna be able to do drag racing and autocross and learn all that kind of cool stuff, and this is probably going to be a pretty good car for it. So it's in really good shape now that we've washed it. As you can see, the paint is really nice. It definitely isn't perfect, but is way nicer than any other paint we have on the channel. So we just lifted it up, started to bleed the brakes, and noticed that this caliper, the seal on it is bad. So we're going to run to the parts store and try to get the caliper replaced. I want to throw a battery in this thing, see if it'll crank up. We did check the gas tank for gas. It does have a little bit of old gas in it, but not completely filled. So I think if we throw some fresh gas in there, it'll probably mix with the old gas and it should be okay. Just to initial fire up. Make sure this thing's healthy and before we start moving on with anything else. So that's what we're gonna do real quick. See if this thing will spark and see if it'll run. And if it does run, then we can run to the parts store, get all the parts that we need, caliper and whatever else, and then we could try to drive this thing for the first time. So let's begin by doing an initial check down on the motor, seeing how everything looks, and then try to fire this thing up. All right, Julie's gonna pull the air cleaner off, see what we were working with here. All right, so it's a rat's nest. Yeah, 4-barrel Holly it looks like. I mean, everything's complete. So let's throw a battery in this thing real quick and check for spark. All right, we ran out to the store. We got a new battery for it. We got a caliper for the driver's side and we got some gas. So we're gonna throw the battery in there just to see what comes on with getting some power to it. And then we're gonna put some fresh gas in it and see if it'll fire. But we gotta check for spark and everything else. So let's throw the battery in there real quick. So this tool is a spark tester tool, and basically we'll put it in line of one of the spark plugs and then it'll light up and let us know that we're getting spark to the engine. So go ahead and pull one of these off. Pull it, there you go, and then plug that in. Make sure it snaps when you push it down. Ew. And then put that in there. There you go.
Like a that and
snap
it?
Yeah. There you go. Cool. So then we'll put this in a spot where we can see it. So when I crank it, let me know if you can see it lighten up. Okay. All right, ready?
Yep.
Well,
yep, we got spark.
I think so.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we got,
beautiful.
That's pretty bright, so we got good spark. So now that one we know that has spark here, you can try to get some fuel to it. So we'll crank it for a little bit. It actually looks like it's starting to pick up some fuel in that horrible gas filter, which we gotta replace. But anyway, for now it'll work. We can crank it for a little bit, see what that fuel looks like, but we'll spray it with some starter fluid and start to prime it, so that way we see if it fires. But let's get some good gas in it, and that way it'll mix in and hopefully it'll run a lot better. All right, we got some fresh gas in it. Now we're going to try to fire it up. I got a fuel filter here so I can kind of see it, see what it does. So try to crank it. I'll put the fuel. All right. All right, I'm gonna give it some ether and see what it does. All right, floor it. Yeah. All right, go. Yep. Fired. Yeah, go. All right. Crank it. almost. Very good. $50. All right, that's the first time this thing has run in 20 years, so it runs pretty good. It's making almost 80 pounds of oil pressure, so definitely seems really healthy. I think we do have a vacuum leak somewhere, so I'm gonna try to check all the lines and stuff because it won't idle. Sounds like we're getting fuel, and it sounds like the fuel looks pretty clean, so pretty happy with that. So just gotta nail down some of these vacuum leaks. I think we'll have it running pretty good. All right, turn on. All right, this thing fires up pretty good now. It runs halfway decent. Sounds cool. I think this will be a pretty good car. So the motor sounds really healthy, makes really good oil pressure. I didn't look at the coolant yet, so I'm gonna have to put some coolant in it, but seems to run really good. It definitely probably has a vacuum leak somewhere because as soon as you go at throttle, it wants to die, but runs very smooth and idles nice. I tried to plug up some vacuum lines and everything, but I'm sure there's about 8 billion of them on this thing, so you just gotta go chasing those. But let me put some coolant in here and we can get this thing up to operating temperature and see how it runs once it warms up. We're just gonna put some water in it for now because I don't know if this thing leaks or not. All right, got this thing up in the air. So this caliper was leaking on this seal here, so we're just gonna pull it off and replace it. So they luckily have one at the auto parts store, so we'll yank this thing off real quick. Then we should have all working brakes, so pretty happy about that. And it runs pretty good. Gotta get probably a vacuum leak or it tuned up a little bit, then we can drive this thing. So let's get to getting these brakes. Alright, got this caliper replaced. Pretty interesting. So it's just a pin that goes through here and then the pads slide right out. So you can get to the pads really easy. I've seen a lot of race cars do that, so didn't really realize that C3s have that, but that's pretty neat. So now we'll just bleed the brakes and we should have all 4 brakes bled, which is nice. So didn't have to do any brake lines or anything like that. So everything works really good.
The next day.
Yesterday we got the Corvette running for the first time in 20 years, so it was very exciting. And today we're gonna try to get it running a little bit better. Whenever we ran it the first time, we had to spray ether in it, obviously, to get it going. But once it picked up gas, the accelerator pump would not let it accelerate. So you'd always have to spray ether in it. And as soon as you gave it gas, it would just die. So what we're thinking is this carburetor probably has been sitting for a long time with gas in it. Probably needs to be rebuilt. Now, I know the carburetor on that one is actually a pretty decent carburetor, but I actually just picked up a 355 from a buddy of mine that had been rebuilt and the transmission had been rebuilt. They pulled it out of a project and LS swapped it. So I wanted to grab the old motor from him and figured that I could use it in a project in the future. So I'm gonna just probably yank the carburetor off of that one. It's a 650 Proform carburetor, and I'm gonna throw it on this thing just so I know that the carburetor's a lot newer and probably is a little bit better shape than the one that's on here. So I'm gonna show you guys the motor I picked up and pull the carburetor off that, throw it on here, see if it'll run a little bit better. All right, so back here I have this 355 I got from a buddy. Apparently somebody had rebuilt this, put a cam in it, actually put a rebuilt transmission on it and a high performance converter. So somebody had it in a C10 and my buddy actually LS swapped it for a customer, and they didn't want the engine, so I picked it up for them for a couple $100 and figured I could use it in a project. I was thinking if the Corvette was low on power, or whenever Julia was driving it for a little bit, if she wanted something a little bit more sporty, we could just swap this guy in here, and it should be a little bit better than the 200 horsepower those C3s made from the factory. So we'll get there down the road, but for right now I think I'm gonna yank the carburetor off this one because apparently it was running recently, and we'll try to see if it will work on the C3 for now and get that stock motor running a little bit better. The guy has a Proform 650, and I think this is kind of one of those, you know, Summit Racing cheapo carburetors, but they're not bad, and it'll be better than what we got. So I'm gonna slap this thing on the Corvette real quick, see how that all works out, and see if it'll run a little bit better with this car. All right, got our new carb yanked off. Now all I gotta do, yank the old carb off, see if it fits. The other one had a spacer underneath of it. Don't think I can run that on this with the hood clearance, not really sure. But anyway, I'm just gonna yank this one off and see how it fits on there. All right, so it looks like I am gonna have to run the spacer plate because of the vacuum line right behind it. I could move that, but for now, I'm just going to use the spacer plate and then set the carb right on top. It does kind of hit the vacuum line a little bit, but I think it should be okay for now. Just kind of worried about hood clearance, but I think it'll be all right for just getting it running, and then I can either, and then if it runs good with this carburetor, I can just move that vacuum line, get a different fitting for it, and then get rid of that spacer plate, and it should be good to go. So I'm gonna bolt this thing down real quick, hook everything back up, and try to run it on this carb. All right, it's running pretty consistent now. We're making about 50 something pounds of oil, 55 pounds of oil pressure. It's got a half tank of gas. It's at 150 degrees. The alternator's working, so the tack isn't working, but it looks like there's a mouse chewed up all those wires on that distributor, so probably gonna have to get that fixed. But it runs pretty good. I'm trying to get the carburetor tuned up a little bit, but everything seems to be doing pretty good for sitting for 20 years. All right, we got it running pretty good, and we're gonna try to take this thing on its first drive for the first time in 20 years. It's been sitting in a garage, so It literally has gotten the interior put in. We just fired it up yesterday, so we'll see how this thing drives after sitting for this long. So pretty cool moment. We'll pull it out right now and try to drive it around the block. All right, first drive in the Corvette. Let's see how it goes. Oh. All right, first drive in the Corvette. It does not want to get off the line at all, but it cruises really nice. But as soon as you stop, it's not happy. But obviously it's been sitting for so long, you gotta drive it a little bit and see how it does. But initial impressions is actually, it rides really nice. Just keep going around the block here. I got no lights. No brake lights, no turn signals. It's shifting though, second gear. This thing's pretty good. There's a lot of noises going on. But honestly, for the first drive, it's not too bad. It definitely needs to be tuned in the carburetor. It's as soon as you get it under load, it just wants to die. So I'm just driving with both feet, but it's driving it for the first time in 20 years here, and it drives very nice actually. Wow, this is cool. This thing is really nice. The ride quality is very nice. Man, what a good car. This thing's gonna be really good when we're done with it. It's like a big go-kart, like everybody says. This thing is... All right, I would say that's a pretty successful first drive. It drove really nice down the road, but the carburetor right off the line, this thing definitely needs some work down low in the RPM range, but once you get going, it's not, you know, it drives pretty normal. But we'll have to tune that and figure that out. I think it probably is timing. The timing marks on the balancer are pretty hard to see, so we'll mess with that. But Corvette is back on the road after 20 years, so pretty awesome. Now the next thing is we got to get all the trim pieces, the door locks, and all the side markers. I don't even have the tail lights or anything in here yet, but we'll get all that stuff plugged in. Shouldn't be too bad. And then we got to do the door panels on the inside, and the glove box thing is not working. Put a radio in it. And that's pretty much it. This thing is pretty close to being back on the road. Then we can start the fun stuff. I'm sure Julia has a bunch of things that she wants to do, like lowering it, putting wheels and tires on it, and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see that next time we work on this thing, but I think this is a huge step in the right direction for this car. So you guys will see a bunch of this car on the channel. It definitely is going to be a pretty fun car. I want Julia to be able to do autocross and drag race and all kinds of fun stuff, but this is a really good car for her to be able to do kind of everything with. And it's a classic, so it goes along with what we do on the channel, and we can also add some performance upgrades along the way as she progresses. But I think this is a very, very good baseline car that she can use to get her feet wet in the motorsports and stuff like that. Can't wait to take this thing on Hot Rod Power Tour. I'm sure she'll want to drive it on that as well. So you guys will see this car a bunch in the future. Really awesome that we were able to get it running and driving after sitting for 20 years in a guy's garage and not being able to finish it. It really just took getting all the interior pieces in the car, but shout out to Joe's Superior Interiors for knocking that out. huge help of organizing all the parts and going through everything, putting it back together. We just have a good 20% of this thing left to go, and it'll be a very, very nice car. So thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.